Hey guys, welcome back to the next video. In this video, we are going to talk about cluster IP. Now, do remember the cluster IP is one of the services, one of the major services which we're going to look out in terms of architecture. Now, in this diagram, I have given you the cluster IP as in like the topic, and you have your laptop, which is having an Internet Explorer, let's just say, for example, which is connected to the internet. And when anything can be accessed to your laptop, it means that it can be accessed to the world as well, because using this laptop internet, the world will be connecting to. But in case, if you think about a real-time scenario, so laptop is nothing but your end user, browser. So that could be the real-time scenario. In our situation, we're using our laptop as the customer, customer side of things. Your virtual machine is basically your server. Now, this virtual machine can be your what is applications hosted on your AWS or Azure or GCP. So it could be any of the cloud providers. So that's basically simulates in our environment or in a localized environment. We are using virtual machine, and the virtual machine has its own IP address. So this is pretty much exposed to your laptop, and laptop will be using this virtual machine IP address to browse the pods running on it. So as you can see that this we have three virtual machines according to our configuration: the 139, 137, 138. 137 and 138 are your worker 1 and worker 2 machines, where the pod will be hosted on different virtual machines. So I've just put it as part of this for the simplicity of the item. So let's just say, for example, these two are hosted in a separate virtual machine. And the manager is hosted on your virtual machine 139. So this is hosted on 137, 138, and 139. So this is how we have configured our three virtual machines, if you remember. Now that what we are going to do is like we have the worker 1, worker 2, and then the service configured. Now, service may not be configured on manager node, but it does not have a location, because service, as you know, it's not a process, it's not a pod, it's just a configuration. It is simple entries, or host entries, firewall entries for it to route to NAT the request. So it is not hosted anywhere. So I put it over here just for a symbolization, but doesn't mean that the service is something which is like a pod and it's hosted somewhere. No, it's not like that. Service is not a pod, and you cannot see it running anywhere unless you can describe that service and see it's a paper-based configuration. And then it does a lot of background networking and firewall changes to enable this. That's the reason why I put it over here. And the cluster, when you execute this YAML file, which basically has a cluster IP service setting, you are going to get multiple URLs. We'll talk about that. Now, in this simple YAML file, what I've done is like I've given kind of service, and I've given the service name over here, my service 1, and specification selector. So this is a restrictor over here on where or how this particular service will be used for, or to who it is will be used for, more or less. So using the selector, I'm selecting any pod which is running with the label name called app:*Sterling. This particular service should be relevant to that. Okay, so that is why we are using selector over here, so that we need to refine what we are actually, who this service is for. So that is what I'm saying it over here. And in terms of the ports, so ports which is configured, I can see two different types of port number configured. One is port number 80 over here, and another port number is 80 over here. What are these two different port numbers? The one port number talks about this particular service will be hosted on this port number 80. So if someone is trying to reach these, why we are creating the service, right? We want it to be a cluster. So rather than accessing these application individually, so previously we were accessing this with their IP address and whatever the port number. Like, for example, I'm running Nginx instance over here. I would be using HTTP port number of 80 and then the IP address. So if I want to browse an application on worker 1, I used to combine this with this is not the VM IP. Okay, so you should understand this is the let's just say this is pretty much your pod IP address. Okay, it is not your pod IP address. It's just a general IP address assigned to your Kubernetes cluster. So we will anyways talk about it. But if your pod IP address will have this pod IP address will be there. So you have to access the pod IP address and then the port number and then access it. That's one way of doing it. But the problem is like you can only do it within this particular environment, like within this virtual machine. You cannot actually use it from here because this IP address is not something which your Linux laptop machine is part of. These are internal IP addresses. The only way the laptop can access this, anything hosted on this pod is through this IP address. Okay, so this is your IP address to communicate to your laptop. And then whatever happens within this, like 172 series, which you see, and then the IP address, cluster IP will be coming in a different series IP address. So all those cannot be accessed from your laptop, which means that nothing from here can be accessed with all these local IP address. These are private network. The only thing the laptop can access is this particular IP address. Now, what this port number tells is like the port number of the service itself. So if anyone connects through the service, they will be using this. The service will be running with the port number. So, but I cannot actually connect it because we need a different kind of a service called node IP. So that's something which we will discuss later. So that will have a different port number. Okay, but the service will be actually running on port number 80, and the target port number or the remote port number for it, where the service which it needs to run for or to capture that service, right? So that is called a target port number. So I've mentioned it as T port. Now, T port is nothing but your target port number of port number 80 over here. So when you're declaring a service or creating a service using YAML file format, you need to make sure that you need to give like kind of service and say that you are using what protocol, TCP, and the port number of your particular service, and then the target port number, which is 80. Now, on the other hand, we have the declaration here for the cluster IP address. So there are 3 IP addresses over here. So one is your 201, which is your Kubernetes IP address, 201 for that node, and Kubernetes IP address of 202. So that is assigned to that node, not the pod IP address. Every pod will be assigned with IP address, so you can actually individually check the pod's IP address. But as we are talking about cluster, you will get a cluster IP address as part of the service which you're hosting. So in the hands-on session, it will be much clearer for you. This is just to get you started and making you like prepared for the hands-on session. But hands-on session which will have more clarity, because when we actually work on this, you will find more details on this cluster IP. Thank you again for watching this video. I'll see you on the next one.